The trade routes of the pharaohs were the veins of their economic power. They sent massive expeditions to the mysterious land of Punt. They were looking for frankincense, myrrh, and exotic woods. These were not just luxuries for the palace. They were essential commodities for the state religion. The smoke of the incense was the scent of money and power. Every ship that returned was a victory for the royal treasury. To protect these riches, the pharaohs built the world's first professional navy. They controlled the Red Sea and the Mediterranean coast. Their soldiers were paid in land and spoils of war. This created a military-industrial complex that demanded constant expansion. A peaceful pharaoh was a poor pharaoh. War was a business strategy to bring in new slaves and new gold. The borders of Egypt were the boundaries of its profit margins. Inside the royal workshops, the art of the goldsmith was a state secret. They knew how to alloy gold with silver to create electrum. This allowed them to stretch their precious metal reserves further. It was an early form of currency to base. They created the illusion of infinite wealth while carefully managing their actual stocks. The brilliance of the gold masks was designed to blind the people to the reality of the shrinking treasury. Marriage in ancient Egypt was also a financial contract. Huge dowries and inheritance rights were documented on papyrus. Elite families used marriage to merge land holdings and grain silos. It was a world of corporate mergers, long before the modern era. Even the pharaoh married foreign princesses to secure trade deals and military alliances. Love was a luxury, but land and titles were the real goals of the nobility. The Nile was the ultimate highway for this commerce. Every boat was taxed at the river checkpoints. The Great Green, as they called the sea, was a source of endless wealth and danger. Foreign merchants from Phoenicia and Crete brought timber and wine. They traded for Egyptian linen and papyrus. Egypt held a monopoly on paper for thousands of years. This control of information and records was a pillar of their global dominance. But the dark side of this wealth was the constant threat of famine. A single bad harvest could trigger a national crisis. The pharaoh's power was tied to the weather and the river. To manage this risk, they built the Fayum irrigation system. It was a massive engineering project to reclaim land from the desert. It was the world's first large-scale environmental engineering for profit. More land meant more grain, and more grain meant more power. As the new kingdom reached its peak, the cost of maintaining the empire became unsustainable. The armies were too far from home. The corruption of the local governors was draining the tax revenue. The shadow of decline began to fall over the Valley of the Kings. The grand monuments became larger as the actual power of the state became smaller. It was a display of strength to hide a growing internal weakness. The end of the Great Era was marked by the rise of the merchant class. They began to bypass the temples and trade directly with foreign lands. The monopoly of the pharaoh was broken. The old system of social credit and grain silos began to fail. Money, in the form of silver rings and copper weights, started to circulate. The era of the God King was being replaced by the era of the international trader. The archives of dark records reveal that no empire is too big to fail. The pharaohs tried to buy eternity with the labor of the living. They turned their entire nation into a factory for the afterlife. But in the end, the sand claimed their cities and the thieves claimed their gold. The stones remain as a silent witness to a time when a single man owned the sun, the river, and every soul in between. We still live in the shadow of their ambition. Our modern banks, our taxes, and our massive infrastructure projects all share a common DNA with the Nile. The desire to build something that outlasts time is the ultimate human obsession. But the lesson of Egypt is clear. A civilization is only as strong as its ability to care for the living while dreaming of the forever. The ledger of the Nile is a story of gold, grain, and the high price of immortality.